Every once in a while, I like to take myself through an exercise, which is turn on the camera without any preparation whatsoever and to just allow myself to speak, to share what is here in this now moment. So as I'm starting this video here, I don't know yet fully what I'm going to be talking about. So it's a practice ground for me. That means that the title of this video, I am going to share it with you um, while reviewing the video. It's like I'm going to listen to the video to find the title, or maybe the title will come up as I keep speaking. So it's process of discovery for myself too. So when I put myself through this exercise, I have a few rules. And one of the first rule, the central rule is actually, it doesn't matter what will come through. I will put it out there. So this video that I'm sharing with you right now, this is, it is a one take thing. And that's also how I contain this exercise. So with that, there is inherent vulnerability in the exercise, which is I may make a fool of myself in this now moment. You know, I will probably not be coherent during some moments of the video, and I can already feel that I'm finding my bearings as I'm speaking right now. My flow is not necessarily impeccable, and that is okay. And I will probably make some mistakes in the wording in my speech as I move through, and that's okay. So it's very vulnerable. There's an aspect of me that's like, just turn it off already, just stop the recording right now and sit down, write down some sort of structure for this video and then bring it up. And you know what? To that voice, I'm not going to do that because I can also see the highest potential of something like this, which is to liberate myself from a few fears, which is humiliation, to make a fool of myself, ridicule, um, and every s- everything else that is associated with these fears. To liberate myself from the grip of these fears, to liberate myself also from some shoulds that I usually operate from, because it should be coherent. It should make sense. I need to make sure that, at the core of it, there is really a message, which there is. The message is self-liberation. The message is to clear our own channel. It is my understanding that at a very individual journey, we are all on our way to become better channel of our higher selves. So as I go through this exercise with you, that is some of what I am doing. And it also pushes me even more when I do that in this kind of, while I'm basically using you or using this platform as a way to keep myself accountable to my own practice. One of our biggest fears is public humiliation. And in my own way, I am flirting with that fear at the moment. And the reason why I put myself intentionally through this exercise is because all the energy that this fear is kind of like taking from me, I would love to harness that energy back. That is a kind of liberation work that I'm committed to allow myself to be expressed in the spaces where I would traditionally shut down. And I'm offering that as a reflection, which is, what are all the ways you are letting the fears that are crippling you suck your energy? There's an author, Robert Augustus Masters, who defines fear as excitement in drag. And I can feel it right now, you know, that kind of excitement, that shift that is beginning to happen as I move through this exercise, which is, you know, an inner fire that starts to fuel my expression in this moment. So another aspect of going through this exercise is because I know that self-liberation, the core of it, there is truly integration. What I mean by that is we are only as liberated as we are integrated. So what that fear of humiliation that I am challenging at the moment, what it caused me to do was to, to shield myself from experiencing pain, a certain pain that I know really well, pain from the past. You know, I've had multiple experiences of feeling humiliated. One that comes up that I can remember really well is I've always been passionate about writing and expression. You know, my first language is French. So I used to write a lot of poetry in French. And in high school, one time, decided in a poetry class or writing class to share my poetry with everyone. And there were a few people in the audience, a few friends that kind of made fun of me because of what I wrote in the poem. And it felt humiliating, especially coming from people that I considered friends back then. So there are a few core incidences of humiliation where I really felt small. You know, I really felt um, ridiculed. And the shame that came up from from these experiences was so destabilizing that to a certain degree, I hid. The poetry that I used to do back then, the writing. It's only in the recent years that I've allowed myself to reconcile with writing in the way I've been doing on my other social media platforms. So it created some sort of like fragmentation, this fear of humiliation, and also, quite frankly, not knowing how to deal with shame back then. I had to repress it because I was not resourced. I was under-resourced. I didn't know how to deal with that. So this exercise is this kind of continuous reminder to come back to my core. Because as I do this, I have no other choice than bringing together the parts of me that were once fragmented. And you know what? The part of me that was fragmented back then, the part of me that I repressed, that I wouldn't allow to show up any longer, it is at the core of my creative expression. It is really central to my creative expression. Writing and sharing and finding ways to make, finding words to make sense of concepts. It is at the core of how I express myself, at the core of how I work, at the core of how I share things that are really resonant with me. So this is an aspect of me that was buried. And through facing the fear of humiliation and the shame that was built in there, I allowed myself to create more intimacy with that part and to discharge my emotional body from so much of the heaviness that I was carrying. And it also allowed me to take off some of my own shackles. That fear came up so many, different times in other ways. You may not know, but English is we could say second language or even third. French is the first one. And then I have a little bit of my mother tongue. And then there is also English. So when I started to write in English, when I started to lean into my work, what came up? Because there's a part of me that likes to be coherent so much, and this is also the part that I'm working on letting loose a little bit. There's a part of me that likes to be coherent so much so that I would need to make sure that what I put out there is so grammatically correct or the vocabulary is on point, and I would spend so much time in that space that sometimes it would suffocate what needs to come out. And that was a coping mechanism that easily became another oppressive force in my expression. So that fear of humiliation reverberated in so many different areas. Here's the key interesting thing. Every single Challenge every single core emotional conflict that you have in your life will keep reverberate in many different ways, maybe even affect relationships, affect the way you love and appreciate yourself, affect the way you show up in your work, and it will keep reverberating until you find some sort of emotional resolution, which is actually the key point that creates integration. And that point of integration is a place where, at the same time, you are intimate enough with the part of you that felt hurt in the past. You are intimate enough with something that was repressed in the shadow, but you are not so fused with it that it gets to hijack you. Like, I've had to create some intimacy with my fear of humiliation to even understand the story that it had to say. I had to create some intimacy with the part of me that is so anal about wanting to be coherent, about wanting to make sense, about wanting things to be perfectly worded. To understand this part as, oh, this is a protective mechanism that is emerging to shield me from the fear of humiliation. And here's another thing that is even more beautiful. If you look at all of these as pieces of my psyche, there's a part that is stuck in the fear of humiliation and the shame that was surrounding that. And then there is this kind of like strong protector, that adaptation that I created, which is everything needs to be coherent, not corny, not weird, to make sense. I need to go straight to the point and all of these different things. And I appreciate so much about that because it has allowed me to just, it continues to allow me to improve the way I show up, the way I teach, the way I speak. And then underneath this fear of humiliation, there is actually a beautiful golden shadow. And that beautiful golden shadow is my capacity to openly share something that feels deeply meaningful to me, something that was repressed back then when my poetry caused me to be ridiculed. And that's something that I have had to reclaim, to be able to share, to be able to show up, to be able to serve. And what I like to say is often to be able to lead, to love, and to serve from my heart. That is at the core of all the work that I'm doing. It is great to challenge your fears. It is great to do all the work of like healing internally and to become intimate with your repressed parts, to do the shadow work. But it's so important to keep in mind, why are we doing this for? It is so important. It is so crucial. In my experience, it is to be able to lead, to love, and to serve from my heart and not my wounds. And that's why I'm so devoted to the work of self liberation, especially for people that have within them, you know, a spark of light. I mean, we all do, but it's people that really feel called to share their brightness with the world. In my opinion, self liberation is primordial for any person that is aspiring to be a creative or a helper, a coach, or, to just share their creations out there with the world. Because if we don't do that work, what we happen to share is not really what is true to us. It's not our personal highest truth. It is a lot of the expectations that we have internalized from the world around us. And sometimes these expectations, they are precisely what hinders our capacity to channel our highest truth. So the work of integration is so primordial. And in order to do that, we need to challenge our inner fragmentation. We need to challenge all the ways we have divided our psyche into tiny pieces. Because all these tiny pieces are precisely what keeps us from having the spiritual stamina, the energetic stamina to shine in the ways we know we can, to love in the ways we know we can, to lead in the ways we know we can. This fragmentation, it is causing energetic splits inside of us. It is causing us to be resistant It is causing us to self-sabotage. It is causing us to, feel stuck in imposter syndrome and all of these different things. It is causing us to feel hindered by the fears of humiliation, alienation, loss, and even persecution. And what happens when we allow ourselves to challenge all of these within ourselves? We create this sense of like integrated, this inner unity that allows us to shine more powerfully, and that's the reason why I'm so committed to the work of integration. It is the most liberating practice we can ever commit to. And that's also one of the reasons why I created so many years ago one of my signature journeys, which is called Integrate. And that's a journey where I usually take only a few number of people. We usually take 10 people in that journey. And the point is really to go to the core of our fragmentation so that we can create more inner unity within ourselves. And that allows us to lead, love, and serve from the heart. That allows us to be unstuck. That allows us to move from, feeling repressed to being radically expressed. That allows us to share more of our gifts with the world. That allows us, just like I said, to reclaim our golden shadow, which is the light we were pressed in the dark in order to feel safe. It allows us to, to let our light call the shots. That's an expression that I really love. To let our heart call the shots. To let your heart run your voice, run the way you're showing up, run the way you are, showing up in your work, in your love life, in your relationships around you. So at the core of it, there is really first cleansing the emotional body, cleansing, the shadow material or integrating and illuminating shadow material that stands in a way. And the more we do that, the more we reclaim energetic stamina. The more we do that, the more we can begin to attune to our own highest values instead of the values we swallowed from our conditioning. The more we do that, the more we can actually break up from our conditioning, break up with our conditioning, and break up with, the project. Usually parents and caregivers, they have a project for us. They kind of want us to become this kind of person growing up. And sometimes it may not necessarily be in alignment with who you came here to be. So at some point, we need to free ourselves from that conditioning and free ourselves from their wants for us so that we can be true to ourselves. And that is, in my opinion, one of the greatest gifts we can have for people who loved us the most, caregivers, family of origin, and so on and so forth. Regardless of the relationship you have with them, I think liberating yourself from any expectation that they put on you that are not necessarily aligned with your truth is the greatest gift to yourself and to the world. That is why we do all this work, in my opinion. So, if you're interested in Integrate, we actually opened enrollment for Integrate. I'm going to leave the link below, and I would love to have a conversation with you to see if this is something that aligns with you. It's a 4-month journey, and we dive in deep. We really clear things that are standing in the way of your highest expression, the hidden forces that are keeping you stuck, the hidden forces that keep you stuck in like self-sabotage, in, resistance. We really work on creating that inner sense of integration so that you can experience deeper liberation. So that was my attempt, free flowing in this video. In retrospect, um, I still haven't decided yet what is going to be the title of this video. But I want to say thank you for being here, for witnessing my process as I deliver this message. If you are not subscribed yet, my invitation is to like, to subscribe, to share with people who may like it. The purpose of this space is to spark conversations that ignite self liberation. That is at the core of my work. That is why I'm here. And it's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.